Hello, am I audible to everyone? Please respond quickly.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
That's great. So I think this is our last lecture before the exam.
Yes, sir.
So when is your last class?
Till tomorrow.
Till tomorrow. Okay, fine. So I think we have finished almost all the topics, and after the lectures, I will post your notes and sample questions, right, to your groups. Okay. So what we finished in the last lecture, please let me know quickly. Hello. Please tell what we finished in the last lecture quickly. I said, am I audible to all of you?
Yes, sir. We
We have
were.
done with the libertarianism. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Utilitarianism is done. Libertarianism done. And what else we have done? Euthanasia we have finished, right? I can see on your section list. Yes. Libertarianism is done. Okay. Right. So we have to finish these 3-4 topics. Okay. Did we talk about John Rawls? Hello. The case for equality. Did we talk about John Rawls' theory of justice? No? Okay. So let's start. I'm giving you brief on these all topics which are very important for your exam. Okay. You can even point down these briefs in terms of some notes. Okay. These are very crucial for your exam because I will be discussing about major points which are important for in these theories, right? So let's start from the John Rawls theory of justice. He wrote a book, A Theory of Justice, and the purpose of writing the book was to create a well-ordered society. Rawls says that a well-ordered society is such society in which there are no unreasonable discrimination. So reasonable discrimination can be good for a society, but not the unreasonable discrimination. So first he questions the discrimination society based on caste, class, religion, and gender. Okay. And then he says, if we have to create a well-ordered society, then we have to experiment. You can see on the sheet what he calls veil of ignorance. He says, veil of ignorance is a thought of a state of mind in which you have to forget all your background history based on your caste, religion, gender, your status, socio-economic status. Okay, these all things you have to forget. And when you forget these all things, then only you can reach original position. Okay, because your background history highly influence your background history, and try to focus on your original position. I mean, what you can achieve by your efforts, by your hard work. not by those factors which are given to you by birth. Okay. So Rawls says that what you should be given in your life or what you deserve should be based on your moral credit. Okay. Moral credit means for which you put efforts, you make sustain effort by your hard work. Okay. It should not be based on the moral luck. Moral luck means what is given to you. So Rawls says that there is injustice in nature because nature has not equally distributed the merit to everyone. So first, Rawls says that justice is to maintain fairness in society and fairness in distribution of resources, educational seats, jobs, powers, positions, rewards, and honors to individuals. How we can maintain this fairness system? He says we should have a right view of justice. So, for understanding right view of justice, he says you have to conduct veil of ignorance. First, you forget the background history, then try to examine the principles of justice which you have. So, Rawls first of all examine all the theories of justice earlier to him. First, he takes aristocracy, which is most ancient theory based on the king and kingdom. He says this system failed to make justice because in this system, what you can achieve was not based on your talent, merit, or dreams, or how much hard work you can do. It was simply based on birth. By birth, it was determined. So by caste and by class, it was determined your profession and your life prospect of life. So this system could not do justice with the all people. Those who were born in upper caste and upper class, they were benefited. Rest of them they were faced injustice. That's why Rawls rejected this aristocracy system. Feudalism. He talks about feudalism. You can see on the sheet. See, feudalism came after aristocracy when landlord, manors, these become powerful, and laborers, farmers, craftsmen, peasants, they become the lower class, exploited class. Rawls says this system was also not good, failed because this system did justice with only king, manors, landlords, and all the revenue collectors, those who became in the high position. Rest of the class, like laborers, farmers, peasant, craftsmen, they remain the exploited class. So they could not receive the equal benefits, resources for the development of their life prospects. That's why this system also failed by the Rawls. Third system is utilitarianism that we have discussed. Rawls says utilitarianism also fails because it talks about the maximum good for maximum number. So it favors majority, but it does not care about the minority. It does not care about the individual rights. That's why Rawls says this system fails because it cannot do justice with the each and every individual. It can do justice with the major community only. Then Rawls moves to libertarianism. He says libertarianism somehow does not fit to maintain justice, but still it's better view comparing to the other views, right? Aristocracy, feudalism, and utilitarianism. Libertarianism is a better view. Why? Rawls says because libertarianism advocate to maintain a basic line, giving basic education requirements, facilities to everyone, so that it can make a fair competition. We can create a equal starting point. But the problem is that with the libertarianism, that libertarians say that once you maintain equal line, then you have to have a fair start for everyone. And then government should not intervene in terms of the redistribution of the marks by reservation or redistribution of wealth by putting taxation on salary that we discussed in the last lecture. So Rawls objects that libertarians criteria of merit because libertarians say that the resources, educational seats, jobs, powers, they should be given based on merits of the individuals, right? Now, Rawls says merit cannot be the criteria. Why? Because merit is given by nature. Merit is something which is not moral credit. Merit you don't create. For merit, you don't put your sustained efforts. Merit is given to you. It is natural fact. And it can be depending on the well-developed genetic genes, right? In the same family, somebody is meritorious and somebody is not. Two siblings are not having same intelligence. Depends on the different development cycle of the genes. And again, So Rawls questions the nature. He says that look, for merit, it's your moral luck, whether you can be meritorious or cannot. Okay. So merit is not your contribution. It is by nature or it is by genetic development. So merit cannot be the criteria because merit you don't put efforts. Okay, you put efforts to sustain the merits only, right? Using the merits, you put the efforts, right? Now, this is very interesting point Rawls makes here. He says what you should be given is not based on merit. It is based on legitimate entitlement. What you are the legitimately entitled for. So he says, in a just society, in a well-ordered society, it is not the question what you deserve. Okay. Rather, the question is what you are legitimately entitled for. And that is why Rawls says that legitimate entitlement should be based on our moral credit, not the moral luck. Merit is a moral luck, he would say. Okay, somebody is born meritorious, somebody is born in a good family, affluent family. Okay, here Rawls tries to balance the nature. He says that there is injustice in nature. Nature has not done justice in distributing the merits to everyone. There is an unequal distribution in nature. Okay, so Rawls says what has gone wrong in nature we have to correct by justice. We have to correct some reasons to balance this nature. That's why he says only legitimate entitlement is the right view. And what is legitimate entitlement? Suppose Virat Kohli is having the good merits of cricket skills, right? He is a good cricketer. He can earn 500 crores rupees. Rawls would say government can set terms and conditions. Say that Virat Kohli is supposed to pay 100 crores tax on his salary. And now 100 crore will go for government funding to spend on building the stadium, government education center, government hospital, so that those people can be supported, those who are not meritorious, those who have not received the equal merit in the nature, those who have been faced injustice by nature. So Rawls says redistribution of wealth is justice. Justice to certain class which are not equally meritorious, which are backward classes, okay, which are people who cannot afford the education, who cannot afford the medicine, who cannot afford the housing. Then government has to support because in the nature equal distribution is not there. That's why Rawls says we have to go for the legitimate entitlement. And for Virat Kohli, 400 crores he is legitimately entitled for, and 100 crores government can take in the name of taxation so that there can be balance of nature, there can be balance of those people because it's not that they're winners in the nature, they're losers in the nature, those who have not got enough education, enough skill to earn money. Suppose you are earning 6 lakh rupees and you have to pay 50,000 rupees taxation. So 50,000 will go to balance those inequalities in society and nature. That's the idea of social justice Rawls talks about. And now Rawls says that there are two principles of justice which are important, okay, and they can be create a well-ordered society. First is principle of equality, that all individuals should be given equal rights and liberties. And second principle, he says, principle of qualified equality. That means that what resources they will receive will not be equal, but yes, they will be given equal as per qualifications. And that is where he talks about the principle of difference, that such differences, socio-economic, can be maintained in society which are in favor of the poorest class, poorest people, which are in favor of the least well off. Like if Virat Kohli earn 500 crores, somebody earn 50,000 rupees, there is a huge difference. But government has to maintain it. Why? Because 100 crore Virat Kohli will give to government to maintain the balance in nature. That's why if there are such differences, but these differences are good for society because these differences will create better off for the poor people. Now, Rawls very importantly talks about the merit and ownership. He says, look, your merit is not your ownership. First of all, merit you receive by nature. That's through unequal distribution, that's through moral luck. And second point, he is very importantly says that recognition of merit, that why your merit will be recognized by society, not by you. So if your merits are not recognized in society, your merits will not be useful. Like we have kabaddi players, hockey players, but they are not earning huge money because Nobody has this charm for the kabaddi and hockey. Yes, cricket has a charm. It is worshipped as religion. So Virat Kohli can earn 500 crores as a sponsorship across the whole world because whole Indian population is backing up the cricket. Likewise, if your talent is not well accepted by society, if you are creating softwares, services, product, and government, society stop buying this. Nobody recognize your talent. If people don't go stadium, don't follow the cricketers on media, TV, radio, everywhere, then they will lose their talent. I mean, talent will not be recognized. So we have to understand it's not only merit is transferred by nature through unequal distribution, but also recognition of the talent. That's important thing. Recognition of talent also depends on the society. That's why we have to give back to society to make the social justice, and we have to give back to nature. That's the very idea of the Rawls theory. I can take quick question in 1 minute. Quick question, quick doubt on the theory of justice by John Rawls. Then we'll move to the next topic. Yes. Anybody has any quick question, any quick doubt on this theory? Please go ahead. Any question? No? Okay, fine. Now let's move to second important topic, that is Kantian deontology, because I'm going to finish all the topics by the briefing you points which are important for your exams. Okay. Then I will later post your notes and you can read and go with preparation to your exams, right? Let's talk about the second theory. What matters is motive. That's deontology by Kant. You know, deontology means a system of morality which is based on the duty. Deontology means sense of duty. Okay. So Kant emphasized that the purpose of morality is not to, the moral decisions are not based on our pleasure, pain, liking, disliking, human nature. According to Kant, moral decisions or moral life is based on reason. And this reason has to be objective, unconditional reason. He differentiates between two kinds of reason, hypothetical reason and categorical reason. And in the morality, that reason is called imperative. Imperative means moral command. So the moral command, the imperative, can be of two types: hypothetical, categorical. Hypothetical moral imperative is conditional, while categorical moral imperative is unconditional. For example, if you attend the lecture for attendance, okay, for appearing in the exam, then your moral imperative is hypothetical, conditional, because you are attending lecture not for knowledge and learning. You are attending lecture simply to appear in the exam, to get the attendance. But if your moral imperative is to learn, to evolve, to develop your personality through the lectures, then this is called unconditional moral imperative, categorical imperative. You follow. And Kant says in the morality, you have to pick the sense of duty. Whatever you are acting, you have to pick the sense of duty with the categorical imperative. So he defines categorical imperative as supreme principle of morality, because it is not based on any external factor, any result, any desire, liking, disliking, ego, anger. It's simply based on objective reason that you have for your action. So in the deontology, Kant says we have to respect the morality in itself. Morality is good in itself. Principles are good in themselves. Honesty is good in itself. It's not that honesty what it can produce. No, honesty is good to act. Okay, so moral life is good to act according to Kant in itself, not what it produces through the action. So he criticizes utilitarianism, which defines that we should act to produce maximum good. He says no, morality is not to produce maximum good. Morality is good to act. That we have to understand, because he emphasized the goodness of the means, not the end. He says choose your means first and then leave everything, forget everything. If your means are correct, your action is moral. Okay, so in this theory, three important things are there. First is reason, That has to be objective. Second is autonomy. Kant says your action should be autonomous action. That means free action. And what is free action? According to Kant, free action is self-legislated action that you think of yourself. It is not imposed on you. It is not externally working on you. It is not in the pressure. That you adapt the morality. You are moral by yourself, not by teacher, not by family, not by institution, not by force, not by pressure. So sense of duty has to be recognized reasonably through the reason, not through any external factor. The sense of duty has to recognized by objective reason. Okay, not by system, not by pressure, not society, not by anything. And that's called autonomous system. Okay, when you act inside, through the inside reasoning, through your mind, through objective reason, when you act, it is called autonomy. Heteronomy means where action is influenced by the others, society, media, friend, school, parents, culture, religion. These all factors are external factors. When you apply scientific objective reasoning, that's your autonomy, because then you self-legislate. Okay, you create the morality, and that's what Kant says. Morality is based on rationality, that is categorical moral imperative, and then autonomy. And then he says that your moral rules, moral principles that you create, they should have the universal nature. That means all people can reasonably accept it because it is based on objective reason. No student can deny that we should attend lecture for learning and development because it is based on objective reason. Likewise, moral actions should be based on moral principles which are universal and objective in nature. They are universalizable. Kant said they are universalizable means anybody can universalize it based on objective reason. Whosoever understand the action, understand the objective reason to act on it. And that is where Kant says that three things are very important. Four things. First is the reason, that is categorical imperative. Second is autonomy. Third is the universalizability. And fourth is sense of duty. Then Kant would say your moral actions are not like ordinary action that you can leave with the choice. No. Moral sense of duty. Like we have obligation and duties. Likewise, we have the obligation, the moral actions. But that obligation is not working from outside, from an external reason. That obligation is based on objective reason. This is the Kantian deontological system. It is based on the categorical imperative, that is objective rationality, objective reason, categorical reason, autonomy, universalizability, and sense of duty. Any question, quick question? I have 2 minutes for this Kantian deontology. Please ask any quick question, because I will be finishing off these all topics with the important discussions. If you have any quick question, you can ask the question.
Sir, uh, do you have any notes for these theories, or what we can say?
There is a one book, Justice, right? And I will be sending you PDF, right? PDF for the, a small PDF is available where you can find important discussion on these theories, right? That I will be posting on the WhatsApp group, right? Otherwise, I have written some passages, important points on these theories that I will post. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Yes. Okay, fine. Let's move to the third important theory for this term. That is, who deserves what? Look, this is a very important question and very ancient question, I would say, because from the very time of Aristotle, right? Aristotle faced this question by his disciples that please tell who deserves what and on what grounds. Aristotle responded very well. He said, look, People deserves according to the principle of moral desert. Aristotle developed this principle of moral desert according to which people should be given according to what they do, and they do according to their virtues and vices, qualities, and the bad qualities. If they act good, produce good, they should be rewarded. If they act bad, they should be punished. That's the principle of moral desert. What we morally deserve, we deserve according what we act, and what we act depends on our character, our forming virtues, qualities. Good qualities, good actions. Bad qualities, bad action. Okay. Good quality, you can be doctor, good doctor. Bad quality, you can be murderer. Right. So Aristotle says it depends on what you produce in the society by your actions. Okay. Then again, Aristotle moves and he says that morality is very well depend and determined by your character. No external objective rule can give you guarantee that people will act morally. But yes, in fact, your nature, your personal character, your behavior can give the guarantee. Honesty is very close to you. If you are an honest person, you will always like honesty. You won't like dishonest. You didn't know you don't need any rule to follow honesty. If you have the honest virtues, honesty of virtue, then Aristotle says that we should develop virtues, inculcate moral virtues, and through the moral education. And virtues are shaped over a period of time by family, society, schools, peer group, and other sources. Aristotle emphasized on virtues. He says that morality is based on subjective personal character. Your personal character will decide whether you will moral or not. And that is where Aristotle says develops his virtue theory. He says that what people deserve is a question of justice, and that is attributive. Attributive means it depends on attributes, qualities you have. And then he says, he talks about a very famous example that if you have to distribute flutes, musical instrument to individuals, to whom you will give the best flutes, and on what ground you will give the best flutes. That's a question by Aristotle. Okay. Then Aristotle answers this question. He says the best flutes must go to best flute players because they are having best flute playing virtues. Through the best flute playing virtues, they can create best musical experience for the society. Likewise, if you distribute best engineering seats, medical seats, law seats, and other professional seats to the best professionals, deserving professionals, then they can create a better society by exercising their virtues in profession. So Aristotle says virtues, what you deserve, and what you produce, not only virtues, but what you produce through the virtues. So here Aristotle says that's not that you have the virtuous character. The benchmark is that you have to prove it. That means each virtue has a purpose in society. And unless a virtue fulfills its purpose, justice cannot be made. So you may be honest, right? But your honesty has to be tested in adversities. Unless you act honestly through practices, exercising honesty in your life, your profession, you can't be honest and virtuous. Saying for saying no, for exercising and practicing. That is where he says justice is teleological. That means a purposive theory. It's not like Rawls distributive. It is purposive. That means the purpose of justice is to create better society. If purpose of honesty is to act honestly in the system to maintain a good system, then purpose of justice is to create better society. But how better society will be created? Only through rewarding virtues of individual, and only through when individuals will have the virtuous practices in society. That is the theory of virtue by Aristotle. Okay. question on this, you can ask quickly because we have to finish the last topic, that is affirmative action theory. Rest of topics we have done. We have done utilitarianism, we have done libertarianism, we have done deontology, we have done Rawlsian theory of justice, we have done also in the last class euthanasia, mercy killing. So last topic is left only, that is affirmative action theory, right? Okay, look, first of all, try to understand what is affirmative action theory. When a government takes some positive actions in terms of subsidies, waivers, reservation, and some socio-economic policies to benefit certain class and caste of people, those who have faced injustice and they are not as developed as the other classes. So government can take some positive actions and they are known as affirmative action. Now, there are three arguments in support of this affirmative action theory. First is known as corrective argument. Look, according to corrective argument, that a government has to correct what has gone wrong in nature in past. A government has people who have faced injustice in past. So the affirmative action is simply correcting the past, giving justice to those who have faced injustice in the past. Okay. Second argument for the affirmative action theory is known as compensatory argument. There are three arguments. There are three arguments in the affirmative action theory. Let me find out. Okay. Yes. Argument. According to this argument, those people who have been privileged and benefited in the nature, in the history, now they should compensate for those who have been unprivileged and unbenefited. So, privileged will be compensating for the unprivileged, and that is moral justice. That is called compensatory argument. The last argument is known as the social representation argument. According to this argument, a government can take affirmative action for those class and caste of people, those who have less representation in society in terms of socio-economic political institutions. So if government finds that there are certain class and caste of people who are not given proper representation, government can give reservation, can give subsidy, can give other kinds of facilities to give them proper social representation in the system. So these were the three arguments for the affirmative action theory. So now any question on utilitarianism, libertarianism, Rawlsian theory of justice, deontology, virtue theory, affirmative action theory, euthanasia, you can ask. I am done with the all important points of these theories. The rest of things I will posting to your WhatsApp groups. Please ask if you have any question.
No, sir.
For the question, yes.
I said no, sir.
Yes or no?
No, sir.
Okay. Those who have the question can ask, otherwise the rest of you can leave. Thank you.